Hello, I'm Grant James from Sea2Soil. I'm really excited to introduce a range of podcasts from experts all over the world in the industry, where I talk to them about soil biology, I talk to them about soil microbial activity, and I talk about increasing the soil health. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have healthy soil, we don't have healthy crops. Grant James here, Business Development Manager for Sea2Soil, talking to Simon Revell, Export Manager for Claydon Drills, sitting in a very windy field, looking at our trials, which are right behind us, but looking really good on a cold July morning. So my first question to you, having to put my glasses on, could you briefly sort of talk a little bit about the technology, the drilling technology and the cultivation systems that Claydon Drills are using at Claydon Farms?
Right, so what do we do here? How does the system work? Well, it's been developed over the last 22 years. We haven't turned the soil here for that amount of time and on a couple of the contract farms, and it seems to work really well. What we have found over the years is the benefits, the extra benefits, but the initial driver, the key driver was profit. And Jeff Claydon wanted to look at what he could do to improve the profitability of the farm. Direct drilling meant that he could reduce the costs dramatically. What he didn't realise at the time would be those secondary benefits that we've now started to realise over the last 20 years what they are. We straw harrow straight behind the combine. We have a 15-metre straw harrow here, and we chase the combine and we go at a slight angle against the combine to distribute the straw and the chaff, okay, which means that we get a nice mulch. That encourages volunteers, weeds to grow, and also preserves moisture. Okay, that then starts, the worms start to react, so they start working on taking the straw down. And we may do that depending on the flush that we get, the weed flush, the volunteer flush. We could do that up to 4 times. We try not to if we can help it. What we did do, an experiment to see when was the best time to straw harrow for the development of the weed seeds and the volunteers. And depending, you don't want those to get too strong, so 2 to 3 leaves maximum. Then we go in at a slightly different angle, hit it again, take those weeds out, encourage a second flush. If we only get 2 flushes, that's perfect. If we get more, then we will do it up to 4 times. We do finish off with a robust application of glyphosate, because we don't want anything, particularly black grass or any resistant weeds coming into the crop, and then we would drill. So we would probably spray off maybe 3, 4, 5 days before we were going to seed. What we are doing now, just to bring you up to speed, is we are drilling cover crops, partly to do with SFI, and we've got various fields now that we're establishing a 4-5 seed cover crop mix. We are doing an experiment, so we've got 3 different types of species from different suppliers to then trial that and see what difference it makes.
Great. I mean, here we are sitting in front of a 5-year, part of a 5-year trial. We're halfway through it. Can you see soil improvers helping and moving and, you know, helping with the soil and soil organic matter and the microbial activity?
I think in that respect, Grant, we've certainly saw some reaction last year, although it was a very difficult year. The trial that we've got going here is in the same place. From the work that we've done already, there looks to be a higher number of tillers. We haven't obviously harvested, as you can see, but we're hopeful that that will show a yield response again. But it is a natural product. From work that we've done previously, it seems like, from my experiences, the natural products seem to have a greater benefit where you've got a high organic matter. We have a high organic matter here. We've done some testing. We did it in this field as well. Across the farm, we've got 360 hectares. Our organics are running between 5 and 10%. So
Very high.
It is high, but that is a testament, I think, of the fact that we've not turned the soil over, we've not destroyed any of the biome in the soil, and we're in a position here where, you know, it's helping us. The other drawback we have is we have a very high pH because we're over chalk, so we're up to the high 7s, which obviously gives us a problem with phosphate lockup. So we're using buckwheat as one way of looking at that. We hope maybe the stuff that we're using with you guys might well help as well. We don't know, do we?
Yeah, but it'll help utilise it better.
We hope, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing is, how did Claydon build a great understanding and expertise in the industry, and how you're getting the message out there? Are you finding that easy, or are you finding it difficult?
That's a good question, Grant. People don't like change, do they?
No.
I wouldn't say particularly farmers, because I think that's a part of the human psyche. None of us like change. So it has been difficult, but people are now realising what the benefits are, because there's a lot, you know, I talked earlier about the secondary benefits. And if you look at things like erosion arrest, we've proven that in many countries, particularly where you've got extreme weather conditions, more so than what we've had here. That's given a real benefit. Soil health is improving, so we're seeing gradually organic matter is increasing, and obviously we know then that helps retain more carbon in the soil. So yes, it's sometimes a slow burn for us. Most of our guys are well versed in what we're doing. They're experts at what they do, so we work very closely with farmers. You know, we don't just turn up and talk about the machine, we talk about the whole process and what the total benefit is to the farmer. And that includes working with people like you guys and other companies to try and give a true whole farm approach, because it's not just about cost savings. Yeah, that's important at the moment, but we've also got to look at the soil and what we do to help the soil for the long-term benefit of farming and obviously the population.
Yeah. Knowing your role, Simon, in Claydon, the European work you're doing, how's it looking in Europe on the soil side? There's a big regen following here and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. What's it looking like there?
Oh, it's starting to gain momentum. There's a lot more organic farms going on in certain countries in Europe. We certainly see that. And we've got several growers that are using the Claydon system within the organic sector. I don't want to be too critical, but farmers need to understand more about what's going on within the soil. Where I travel, many different countries, there is still a real lack of understanding about what's going on below the soil. Fine above the soil, looking at, you know, the crop, disease, insects, weeds, etc., pests, etc., stuff like that. But when it comes down to really getting the nuts and bolts of the soil, there's still a lot of education to be done. The biggest problem we have is the climate, what's going on in certain sectors. I mean, southeast central Europe is really suffering drought or lower rainfall, lower snowfall, which traditionally they would have got, and higher temperatures. You know, you get a crop that's struggling for 3-4 weeks at the high 30 degrees, 40 degrees. It really does cause a problem. And I think farmers are having to look at what they're doing with their cropping in some countries.
Right.
Okay, then in other countries, further north, we're getting higher levels of rainfall, more intense rainfall, which we're experiencing here. So it is a real challenge. But we know by increasing, again, without going back to it too much, the soil health, the soil becomes more resilient and it can absorb more rain. And it can hold more rain. Seems a bit of a paradox when you talk about that, but it's a fact. Healthier soil can hold more humidity in the soil, and it can absorb more quickly.
Yeah.
So that's a key.
Yeah.
So coming back to your question, yes, very similar. You know, farmers are very similar, whether they're from Kazakhstan, Ukraine, right across through Europe, into the UK, up into the Scandinavia and the Baltics. Very similar in there. You have to really work hard to get them to think about changing what they're doing. Yeah. Because it's a comfort zone.
It is, yeah. Which is probably the reason why you and I are looking at a new concept on this farm.
Don't forget, we've also working with Waitrose with
correct,
the guys down in their farm down in Hampshire. So that's already been going, because on their farm they already have a Claydon drill. So that again will give us a good on different soil types, different conditions.
And also all working together, moving in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think this is really key. I mean, throughout my career, with my previous hat on, we've always worked closely, as you know, with what we did with the eco-tillage thing with Simba. Yeah. And I think that's really important to come together as a group, not just as a commercially, sure, we want to sell more products, sell more machines, but we also want to make sure that there is a future for farming. And I think that's absolutely key, working together with agronomists, with companies like yourselves. And my excitement is that it's an organic product. Yeah. You know, it's a natural product, and it's a byproduct that we can use that normally would have been, if you like, waste, that would have been put in landfill or put back into the sea perhaps. And I think looking at it, we've seen the first results here. Last year was difficult, but it looked encouraging. Yep. And I think with what we've done so far with the monitoring, we've got a higher tiller count, so we've got a higher head count.
And looking at the future, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, you and I both will be retired.
Thanks for reminding me, Grant.
But where do you see this whole moving forward? It's going to be sustainable right the way through. It's got to be the way forward, hasn't it?
Oh, 100%. So I get a bit frustrated with the sustainability. It's often used, it gets a bit washed out now because everybody uses it. What is sustainability? You know, we've got to think about the future, and particularly in agriculture. And I think what I've learned over the last 35 years or so is that very definitely we have to look after the soil, and the soil is key. So for us, moving forward here, we're going to keep looking and testing and trialling and seeing what we can do to move forward. Not just for the Claydon farm. You have to understand that all of us involved with Claydon and yourselves, we're in farming. You know, we're not, I'm not a direct farmer, I come from a farming family, but we have to think about the future. There is a lot of pressure on the whole food production cycle, and we have to keep moving forward. So from my point of view, what is next? I think what we're doing here, testing, trialling, looking. One thing I would think we may have to start looking at what we do with seed breeding because of the climate change. I think that's going to be important. So we may have to look at different varieties to cope with what we're seeing at the moment. I mean, if we look at the weather situation that we've had, 22 was very similar to 25. Well, that was only 3 years ago. So we had a long dry period through the main growing part of the season, and now it's turning wet again. Are we going to get a wet back end? You know, questions for that. The crops look pretty good here. I think the reason the crops are looking good is because of what we've done over the last 22 years or so, and the soil condition and the condition of the soil, the organic matter. But we've got to keep pushing, we've got to keep asking questions, and we have to keep learning. So from my point of view, Grant, yeah, you know, where do I see it? We have to keep pushing forward, pushing those boundaries, asking the questions and saying, can we do better?